And joining us now to discuss this and more is Congressman Mark Harris. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee as well as the Education Workforce Committee. He represents the 8th Congressional District of the great state of North Carolina. He's also a pastor. Congressman Harris, welcome back to Washington Watch, my friend. Always an honor to have you.
Hey, Jody, it's great to be with you this evening. Thanks for having me.
All right, so ICE, I think we all are aware, ICE has certainly had some pretty bad rap this past year. I think most would agree that there are some reforms that certainly probably are needed, but Democrats seem to be taking this way too far. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Jody, thank you so much for asking. I mean, you're exactly right. We've got to continue to remember that ICE, these folks are law enforcement officers, and they have a job to do. And what we're seeing happen right now in Congress has been so frustrating with the action just a couple weeks ago that the Senate took in trying to pass funding for all of DHS with a zero for ICE and for Custom Border Patrol. And they sent that over to the House, and we just weren't going to have anything to do with that. So we actually passed another funding bill for the entire Department of Homeland Security that would be a continuing resolution to get us to May 22nd. We sent that back over to the Senate, and once again, they passed yet another version and sent it back, and it's still sitting in the House right now, that again zeroes out ICE and Custom Border Patrol. And the idea at this point is that they want to move a reconciliation bill. And, you know, the sentiment that I hear on Capitol Hill, there just isn't the sentiment to pass any bill that zeroes out Custom Border Patrol and zeroes out ICE. Just not going to happen. So I think the Senate, I'm understanding that Senator Graham and the Budget Committee over there is getting things in order this week to get ready when we get back next week for a reconciliation bill to begin making its way through the Senate that would fund the Border Patrol and fund ICE, and then try to pass on our side moving both of them at the same time, because there's just not the stomach to pass something that zeroes out ICE and Border Patrol. And these voices that people listen to ought to continue to remind us that these agencies are critical for their funding.
Yeah, they really are. It seems like a very, very dangerous ping pong game taking place. You know, Congressman, I found it interesting, new, I will say, Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullins. He actually suggested that the federal government could potentially stop processing customs at airports in sanctuary cities. And of course, he said that as a way to potentially put some pressure on them as it relates to immigration enforcement. What's your thoughts on that strategy?
I think it's a great strategy. You know, one of the things that we just passed out of the Judiciary Committee is the defunding of these sanctuary cities. And we're going to be taking that up on the floor here before long. Once again, letting folks know that you cannot receive federal government funding and at the same time say we're not going to enforce federal immigration laws. It's inconsistent, it's unforgivable, and the reality is that we've got to take the responsibility and say that we're not going to be sending taxpayer dollars to fund these Democrat-run cities that are just totally ignoring our immigration laws in this country. It is so critical. When we see every day, it seems like, Jody, we're seeing more and more stories of someone killed by an illegal immigrant in this country, whether it's somebody being killed by a hammer, striking them in the head, whether it's being killed by a drunk driver, whether it's being killed by, it's someone that is here illegally and is doing damage to American citizens, and it's got to stop. And again, we've got to continue. And I appreciate Secretary Mullins' suggestion that we look at this and look at moving forward with it, perhaps.
Yeah, it's not just the crimes that oftentimes are being committed and highlighted, but the fact that so many of these just get released right back on the streets all over again. Before I let you go, I want to hit on another issue that I know is very, very dear to you and to me as well. I know last week you and Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma led a group of lawmakers in an effort to try to stop the IRS from silencing America's pastors and churches and nonprofits. And by the way, that was on the very same day that a federal judge dismissed a challenge to the Johnson Amendment, which really has been suppressing free speech of religious leaders in churches and nonprofits for a long time, since about 1954. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that ruling and what needs to happen to defend religious speech going forward.
Well, I think we were all pleasantly surprised when the courts upheld back in December a case that basically was brought by the national religious broadcasters and a number of churches and leaders there in Texas. And the court came to an agreement with the Internal Revenue Service that basically they were setting aside the Johnson Amendment. In the meantime, actually 1 year ago, on March 31st of 25, Senator Lankford and I introduced simultaneously, myself in the House and he in the Senate, the Free Speech Fairness Act that was going to protect churches. And when we had this ruling that came out late last year, it seemed like everybody felt, well, maybe we don't necessarily need this. It's been taken care of. But sure enough, as we so oftentimes see, you have a judge that steps in and in this case set aside that agreement that was brought by those plaintiffs as well as the IRS that had all agreed to it. So now that he set it aside, it has sparked once again the importance of this legislation moving forward. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to get it on the floor of the House. This is something that Leader Scalise and Speaker Johnson have both been supporters of in the past, and they were kind enough to ask me to take the bill in the House last year. We got it introduced. So we want to move it along with the Ways and Means Committee and see if we can't get this on the floor, get it passed in the House, and then we're going to hope and pray that Senator Lankford has some success getting the lift there in the Senate.
Well, I certainly hope so. That was the single issue that drove me to Congress itself. And so thank you for continuing to push that. And look, all of us here at FRC agree with everything we've got, that pastors and churches should be able to speak freely on issues, but they not only should have the right, they should do so. They need to step up to the plate and engage biblical truth into the public square. That's why we have our God and Government series, as well as some Pray Vote Stand chapters, which we have talked about on this program. Your church is now going to be one of those chapters. I wish we had time to talk more about this, but our time has expired. But it is critically important for pastors and churches to engage biblically. I want to thank you so much, North Carolina Congressman Mark Harris. Always an honor to have you on the program. Thanks for standing firm, my friend.